Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your host Sam Foote.
And Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Microsoft 365 focused IT security professionals. It's episode 7 of season 6. Alan and I recently had a discussion around the new releases and updates in February. Here are a few things that we covered. Key Microsoft Entra, Intune and Defender features, updates and announcements. Azure changes, new features and retirements. We've noticed that a large number of you aren't subscribed. If you do enjoy our podcast, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to us for you to show your support to the show. It's a really great episode, so let's get started. Hey Alan, how are you this week?
Hey Sam, not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Very good. Anything new or interesting since the last time we recorded a podcast episode?
Not that I can think of. I've been pretty busy at work, so I've not really had a chance to check things out, to be fair. There's definitely a few things that sort of have been coming out that I guess we're going to talk about in a bit. But how about you?
Likewise, really. I have seemingly started to, I don't know, my YouTubing seems to have navigated across to malware analysis and building a detonation lab at home, which sounds scary but also fun at the same time. So, yeah, I think I've probably spent a bit too much time theorizing what I can build in my lab than I probably should have. But I do find it quite interesting to look at, what other disciplines and what other people do, for forensic analysis and incident response, right, and recovery.
Yeah, no, that sounds interesting.
Yeah, so this week is the news for February. Typically, we'll do this. If you're new here, we typically do a news episode once a month. It is usually the first week of each month. We're a little bit late this month due to some, I'll call it technical issues, not with this system, but with another system that Alan and I were debugging one night. We run through anywhere from Defender updates all the way across Defender XDR updates and the related products, Purview data, and also into Azure and multi-cloud as well. So, without further ado, Alan, should we get started? What's new in your world?
Yeah, okay, so let's start with Microsoft Defender XDR as generally the service itself. In February, a preview was brought in around allowing or putting IP addresses into the excluded or to be excluded from automated response within the baked-in attack disruption. So the automatic attack disruption that Microsoft has in place, you can now specify IP addresses where I think previously it might have only been users and maybe devices where you prevent that automatic disruption. So that's quite good because I guess you could have some critical assets from a specific IP address that you don't want to be able to prevent from communicating. The other parts in here is the preview of the privileged Entra PIM role column being added to Advanced Hunting and the Identity Information table. So now you're able to see whether a user not necessarily has an Entra role active permanently, but now you can see whether they can elevate into those roles, which I think is quite good to know because, again, the user account might look standard as part of an incident, but there's obviously a risk there if they can elevate into a PIM role.
Really good, definitely.
So I think that
useful to have that extra information, right? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So that's Defender XDR. If we now move into Defender for Endpoint, so again, there's not too much here. So in January, there was a public preview around aggregated reporting for the Defender for Endpoints, be able to extend signal reporting intervals to significantly reduce the size of reports of events, preserving essential event properties. So that's now gone into general availability, GA. So that's now, it didn't take too long to move to that state.
Nice.
If we move into Defender for Identity, so in February, there's an update to the PowerShell module. So this allows for, this was created in effect to help with onboarding and doing some testing locally on the Active Directory domain controllers, so that you could verify configuration, things like that. So now you're able to do tests against the settings for Active Directory recycle bins, or recycle bin, I should say, not bins. Support for testing, getting and testing proxy configuration for the new MDI sensor, so the new unified agent, or unified sensor, I should say, sort of functionality there. And then they've also added some new attack path tabs in the identity profile page, allowing you to see them there, and also to bring them into the unified or the exposure management side of things. They've updated some of their recommendations. I say that plural, but it's actually only one of them. But it's the one for protect and manage local admin passwords with Microsoft Laps. So in effect, they've updated to the latest version of the Windows Laps. So potentially this is going to be able to track any new configuration that you can set, or where registry has changed from that side. And then within advanced hunting, in the Defender XDR portal and the identity directory events, they've added and updated the following events going into advanced hunting. So you've got user account control flag has been changed, security group creation in Active Directory, failed attempt to change an account password, successful account password change, and the account primary group ID has changed. So they've been added or updated in that table.
Nice.
Yes. Moving on to Defender for Cloud Apps, MDA. So they added enhanced visibility for OAuth apps connected to Microsoft 365. So that is enterprise apps, app registrations in Entra. Be able to see more information there, and be able to do filters based on the permissions, and be able to export that list. So you're now able to generate lists quite easily of a specific permission. Maybe that's send.mail, which is quite a powerful and potentially dangerous permission there, that you can now filter on all of your apps and see which ones are trying or have the access to use it. We tend to see that in the the Outlook or calendar, what they call it, assistance applications, where they send some stuff for you. So
You're going to name names, Alan.
No, off the top of my head, I don't know what they are, so it's all right. They won't be named ashamed. But sometimes some of the, I think it is some of them sort of well-known apps, because they need it, because that's how they need access. But that is what it is, kind of thing. You've kind of got to decide on the risk on that, or whether you should be using that app in the organization. So so on top of that, within the Defender XDR, they've enhanced the alert source accuracy. So that's just making sure that depending on where the alerts come from, it's just adding, making sure the alert is identified or categorized correctly from the source. So I guess previously there was some inaccuracies around whether it's Defender for Cloud Apps or whether it was from SaaS applications and things like that. And that's it for Defender for Cloud Apps. If we move into a new area that I don't normally talk about, and if we talk about Microsoft Purview.
Hello.
Yeah.
Go on, Mr. Purview.
Yeah, well, data is the key thing at the moment.
Oh yeah, tell me about it, Alan. Tell me some more.
No, you're right.
I completely agree.
Okay, so within audit, Microsoft Entra risky risk detection activity is now potentially going to be in there as well. So allowing that to potentially feed into other Purview sort of information. We've got a new data connector for the Hong Kong CSL SMS/MMS data connector. So I'm guessing to be able to track some information around text and picture messages or multimedia messages maybe into the Purview side of things. Within the data security posture management for AI, they're adding some new LLM sites into that, and some of the new ones, including things like DeepSeek. I would go through that list, but there's quite a few in there. Again, I won't. Let's just try see if there's any. Iris.ai. Yeah, there's loads in here. You got Copilot, things like that, all the obvious ones, but there's a load of other other ones out there that I've not seen them before, but they must be well used out there. So yeah, some more ones added into that posture side of things. And within Insider Risk, there's a preview for using indicators from the Microsoft Entra ID indicators we were talking about with the audits. So that's probably why they've now come in. With sensitive labels within Purview, it's now generally available to use dynamic watermarks for labels that are configured for the assigned permissions encryption configuration, which is in effect where admin defined permissions are used. So that's when a user specifies the permissions on the file as they create it from there. And as part of that as well, when the document is rendered, or the watermark is rendered over it, the reader's user principal name is added to it. So if they do attempt to take screen grabs or print it, I guess, then it will show which user had done that.
Yeah, really cool. Really good.
Yeah, that's what I thought. With moving on, there's a preview now for when you protect a Teams meeting with a sensitive label. You can now automatically apply or recommend that the meeting label is changed to the highest priority sensitive label for files shared in that meeting. So whilst files might be shared in a conversation as part of that meeting, it can then decide to move or to elevate the sensitive label to any artifacts that are added into it. So again, I think that's kind of adding that functionality you get within Office, within Outlook or Exchange Online, I should say, where if you add an attachment, you can get it to change the label to meet the highest level within it.
Yeah, really good. Really good.
Yeah, it just helps with some automation there, doesn't it, to make sure it's all being classified correctly. So
yeah.
So that's that. Moving on to Microsoft Entra. So it's now gone generally available for the authentication methods migration wizard. So at the moment, Microsoft are looking to deprecate the old MFA configuration settings. Well, in effect, the single or per user configuration, as well as the current self-service password reset SSPR authentication methods in there. So they're trying to merge it all into one place, which is the authentication method policy. So as part of that, now on top of it, you can see where you are in your status or where you are on that migration step, and it's able to identify users that need to be migrated and things like that. So it's definitely a good tool to help do that migration. There's a preview for authenticating with a QR code to make it simple and fast for frontline workers. So I've not tried this myself, but in effect, what you can do is, let's just take a look. You can enable it in Graph, all users, 10. You can, in effect, there's a new link that says sign in with QR code. In effect, then you can navigate to So the Microsoft sign in on an Android iOS device, sign in with your QR code, and go from there. So that's quite interesting. It's meant to go, supposedly meant to be going GA early March. So it might already be done.
Yeah, really nice. Yeah, any extra protection that we can layer onto, especially frontline workers, because that can be a tricky, authentication scenario. All the better. Yeah, again, I haven't tried that yet, but it's definitely on my list to have a look at.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be something similar to, or not necessarily equivalent to, but you've got the things like the one-time password, or the temporary password that you can use. So you can move to passwordless authentication. So it might be something similar to that as well. But yeah, that is it for Entra. There's a few other things in there, but I'm going to leave those ones for now. So for Intune, there is some new Windows AI settings available for Windows setting in the Windows settings catalog. Disable AI data analysis, set deny URI list for recall, set deny app list for recall, set maximum storage space for recall snapshots, and set maximum storage duration for recall snapshots. So a lot of recall related things there. So yeah, specifying apps you don't want it to capture, because that was obviously a key concern, wasn't it, at the time, depending on what applications you were using. And being able to specify how long it keeps data for. So I think that's probably a good one if you are looking to enable it.
Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see, how the enterprise does or doesn't use recall, right? And what they allow it to capture or not capture. Because I know that from some of that initial testing, there were some concerns about, how smart, like I think it was things like credit card information and stuff like that, where it said it wouldn't capture it, like the AI algorithm would skip past that automatically, or whether that was effective and things like that. So sounds like it's good that there is actually controls there for the for organizations, but will they just keep it disabled? Don't know. I'd love to try it on an actual Copilot machine. I've just not had access to one to see how valuable it actually is.
Yeah, I guess that maybe the missing part was how long it keeps the recall for as well, because maybe you might only want to keep for 24, 48 hours maybe from that side. I mean, it depends if that makes it useful or not, of course, at that point, but you'd have to see. Moving on, so there is a new privileged or lower privileged account for update to an effect for the Intune connector for Active Directory for hybrid joined autopilot flows. So being able to use a lower privileged account now to increase the security of your environment. So it's in effect an update to the connector, and then being able to then update the permissions basically for it. So that's definitely not a bad thing.
No, really good. Really good to see that.
Back to our QR code authentication. The managed home screen app now has QR code authentication and a public preview. So allows you to, in effect, if you want to sign into that device, you can in effect then just scan your QR code and get signed in. So yeah, that kind of completes the picture of how you would use it in that scenario. So I'm guessing you'd have to have it printed out on a card or something like that, so then you can use it as your login.
Nice.
And moving down, there was another one. Yes, so device security is part of this. They manage the device control enabled configuration within the Defender device control for Windows. There's a setting in here for the default enforce. This has always been something you've had to manually put in. So now you're able to put it in and in effect use the catalog for doing it. previously you had to use an OMI URI. So it helps complete the full picture for that. They've also enabled the other part to it as well, where you can enable device control through the template as well. Because sometimes whilst configuring it would also enable it, it by default kind of configured that for you. So now you can actually set it as well. So that's good.
Nice.
Just checking anything else. So you can now... No, that's nothing to worry about. There's an updated security baseline for Windows 24H2. So being able to have a Microsoft baseline that then you can configure it, for best practice, but also then just change configuration within there that maybe disable some of your applications, or you need some of that configuration enabled to have those applications work. So that is it for Intune, and that is it from me, I think. Just final checks, but yeah, that's all I had for this month. There's a couple in there that are quite interesting. Probably going to put us down a rabbit hole. I think the QR code one's going to be it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But yeah, so over to you, Sam. What have you got for this month?
Okay, yeah. So I'll start with Defender for Cloud, the first improvement, which should be rolling out sometime in March. So it might have already hit by the time you listen to this. But they're improving the resource name display for AWS EC2 instances. So previously you just saw the instance ID in the portal. But now if there is a tag which has got the name, a tag, if if there is a tag named name in AWS, it will bring that in and use that as the name of the resource in Defender for Cloud. If there is no tag that's there, it will still come across, but it will still use that resource ID as it did before. So it'll make it a lot simpler to actually see those resources.
Cool.
The next one is on-demand malware scanning in Defender, Microsoft Defender for storage. It's now globally available, or generally available. Sorry. It enables scanning of existing blobs in Azure storage accounts whenever is needed. So you can initiate a scan from the Azure Portal UI or via a REST API, which then gives you support through automation such as logic apps, automation playbooks, or PowerShell scripts that you might want to run. Every time you run it, it uses the latest malware definitions for every scan, and provides a upfront cost estimation in the Azure portal before scanning, so you can decide how frequently you want to run those on-demand scans. Defender for Storage malware scanning now supports scanning for blobs up to 50 gigabytes in size. The previous limit was 2 gigabytes, so definitely a welcome change there, because that's quite a big jump. To sort of public service announcement, if you do want to avoid unexpected high charges, you may want to set an appropriate cap on the total gigabyte amount scanned per month. So there is a cost control feature for malware scanning. So check that out. There is a preview for the data and AI security dashboard inside of Defender for Cloud. Alan, as you know, and we've spoken about, there is a big push around data controls, data security, data governance with AI, and Defender for Cloud is also getting that side of things with that same treatment. So there is a dashboard that is in preview. So to give you a unified view of sensitive data that is discovered via Defender for Cloud. So go and check that out if data security is something that you manage. The next one is a cost calculator, which has come into preview, which is called the Defender for Cloud cost calculator. What it essentially is it's a multi-cloud supported script that you can run to scan your environment to give you a comprehensive cost estimate of how much it would actually cost to run the workloads in Defender for Cloud. As we've spoken about previously, the scoping of Defender for Cloud can be a bit challenging sometimes to understand, what is scoped for scanning and how much that is going to cost you. So any guidance that you can get ahead of time is going to be valuable to you. I believe it's a script because of that multi-cloud support. But yeah, you can select the plans and environments that you want to focus on, and then it'll automatically populate the number of billable units for each plan per environment to give you that breakdown of cost.
Nice.
There are enhanced multi-cloud regulatory standards that have been. There are new ones and also enhanced ones in Defender for Cloud. The update post does say 31 new and enhanced. I think that is now 31 total, but I haven't been to the portal to check it myself. The vast majority now of what I would call industry regulatory standards are now multi-cloud. So that is Azure, AWS, and GCP support. And we're also seeing a lot of the vendor-specific cloud frameworks coming in. I'll use the example of AWS Well-Architected Framework. That is their own benchmark for their own platform. That is supported in Defender for Cloud if you have a connected AWS accounts in there. So Microsoft is and Defender for Cloud has always been like this. They are advocating the use of Defender for Cloud across other clouds and actually even but bringing in and giving access to those third-party frameworks. So they are embracing multi-cloud. Defender for Cloud has done that since forever. Well, no, not forever, because it was Security Center before, but more recently, I should say, they have just been like, we don't really care where the workload is. We want to apply Defender for Cloud to it, and we want you to get that visibility. So yeah, that's really, really good to see.
Yeah,
so quite a few good updates there in Defender for Cloud. Right, moving on to Azure. Generally available now in Azure DNS is Azure DNS public zones now support DNS security extensions or DNSSEC support. This adds a level of cryptographic authentication of DNS data. Quick DNS 101, the original implementation of DNS, was unencrypted. There are, I would say, like major privacy concerns with DNS data. And DNSSEC and other DNS-related encryption and protection mechanisms now add a level of anonymity and privacy to DNS queries. So really good to see this coming in. You can enable it on all existing and new public DNS zones hosted on Azure DNS. So yeah, if you do want to take advantage of DNSSEC, definitely check that out. There is now a generally available with Azure SQL Database. There is now a free offer tier for Azure SQL databases. So you can have 10 Azure SQL databases free of charge for the life of your subscription. This is not linked to like a 30, 60, 90 or 1 year trial. You can provision up to 10 databases, each with 32 gigabytes of general purpose serverless Azure SQL database, and you get 100,000 vCore settings of compute every month. So this is great for learning SQL, pre-production UAT environments, or maybe you want to connect, you need a place to store data where you connect Power BI to it, potentially. The possibilities are endless, and this is just a great literal free offer for some capacity. Obviously, there's no advocation of using this for quotes production environments, but for pre-prod and learning, it's a great addition. Azure Data Studio. This is a retirement announcement. Azure Data Studio will be officially retired on the February 28th, 2026. You have a year to migrate away. They're going to be focusing and improve the user experience of connecting to cloud-based data systems in Visual Studio Code itself. We've seen this with other workloads and resources in Azure. There are extensions, and there's a big focus on Visual Studio Code providing that functionality now. So it doesn't surprise me that they want to get rid of that independent application. There will be migration steps for database projects as well supported. An update for Azure Firewall. There are increased IP group limits. So they have doubled the IP group limit in Azure Firewall policies from 100 to 200. So this gives you more flexibility, more IP addresses within firewall policies, and it'll help you optimize configurations where you have complex network security requirements. There is now a 6th generation these are now generally available, virtual machines. 6th generation Intel-based virtual machines, DV6 and EV6. They are built on new 5th gen Intel, which is a bit confusing considering I just said it was 6th generation Intel. But anyway, I can't explain that. Emerald Rapids processors. They have different memory to core ratios with extended memory support, memory optimized instances, the usual different ratio offers. There are 84 different virtual machine sizes in total, ranging from 2 to 192 virtual CPU cores and up to 1.8 terabytes of memory. I'd love to see what the 192 V core and 1.8 terabyte of memory instance costs. Up to what are the benefits? You get 27% higher virtual CPU performance and 3 times larger L3 cache than the previous generation DV or EV5 virtual machines. So big performance uplifts. And you can also benefit from Azure Boosts, which allows you to enable up to 400,000 IOPS and 12 gigabytes per second remote storage throughput, and up to 200 gigabits per second virtual machine network bandwidth, which is, that's not too shabby. Those bandwidth options that you've got available to you. A 46% larger local SSD storage capacity, which includes 3 times the read IOPS of the previous generation. NVMe interface for local and remote disks, and enhanced security through total memory encryption technology. I assume that's an Intel specific memory encryption technology from the name. So initially, they're available in North American, European, and Asian regions to start. Azure SQL had a mid-month update, which improved the progress reporting and gave you explicit cutover control when you are migrating Azure SQL databases to the hyperscale tier. So essentially improved migration support there. No bad thing. To give people more information on those types of migrations. A public preview has gone public preview is now running for Azure SQL on virtual machines, which is the modernization advisor. What this does is it looks at the SQL servers that you're running on Azure virtual machines. So think about you managing SQL Server on infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, and it will give you a modernization advisor. A modernization advisor will help you to manage and give you a guidance on how to migrate to Azure SQL Managed Instance. If you haven't heard of Azure SQL Managed Instance, it's essentially SQL Server, but it is a managed instance of SQL Server. This can be beneficial to you if you have workloads that can't be migrated to Azure SQL, as in the PaaS version of SQL, as it does differ in its implementation of SQL to traditional SQL Server. So managed instance can bridge that gap for you for that migration. I do have one other update for. I'm just gonna go and grab it. Sorry, 2 seconds. I've just missed my. Talking about Azure Managed SQL Instance, you can now use native Windows principles for Azure SQL Managed Instance. So that will help you to simplify the migration of legacy applications that are tied to Windows login authentication. I haven't seen that in action. I don't know how that works, but I can imagine that was a big pain point for people migrating workloads into that managed environment. There is a public preview now for Azure Database for MySQL. There is a virtual canary maintenance program, which allows you to preview new versions of Azure Database for MySQL before they hit your production workloads. So think about your pre-prod, UAT, development testing environments. You may want to run the bleeding edge version of Azure MySQL. That can help you to plan for compatibility or performance optimizations for those newer versions that are going to hit and maybe be forced upon you in those production environments. So really good to see that being handled on the MySQL side. Now generally available with Azure Arc is the ability to discover Postgres SQL at scale. So it allows you to see what servers are running Postgres from a single easy to use interface. So a lot of convenience when overseeing your database infrastructure with that update. There is a public preview for virtual machines in Azure, which allows you to upgrade existing Azure Generation 1 virtual machines to support Generation 2 Trusted Launch. When we talk about Trusted Launch, we are talking about enabling secure boot and a virtual TPM capability. So this Trusted Launch boot chain of a virtual machine can add a lot of additional security protection for you. So it's good to see that they're retroactively allowing you to enable at least Trusted Launch as part of a Gen 1 virtual machine. You can now schedule for generally available Azure load testing. You can schedule load tests in Azure load testing now, so you can decide when you want to run your automation tests on predefined time or cadence. So you can run them without any manual user intervention. So yeah, really good for teams that want to automate and run it at different times. There is now there's a public preview running for Azure Cosmos DB. There is a Rust SDK. Rust is a highly performant programming language that is used in countless different industries and complex high performance scenarios. So now there is a Rust SDK for the Azure Cosmos DB for NoSQL. So you can connect to NoSQL directly from Rust. There is a Azure Cosmos DB Rust software development kit is now in public preview. What was the next one? There is a public preview in Azure SQL Database. So there are new TSQL features that have been added to Azure SQL, and this is what I was kind of talking about, the whole managed instance thing and why you may still need managed true SQL Server. So there are now regular expression functions you can now run in Azure SQL, fuzzy string matching, and big int support has been added in the date add function. So there are two relatively big missing TSQL features that have been added. Like regular expressions have been been used in TSQL for years and years and years and years. So that's really good to see that is supported now. And the fuzzy string matching again, really big. And then that specific support for big in date add is really good to see. It feels like they're really wanting people to migrate their SQL workloads to the cloud, and they're making that as easy as possible. You can now back to Azure load testing. Can now generally available configure notifications. So you can get notifications for key events such as test completion or schedule changes. So it can help with team collaboration. Sorry, I should have grouped those two together. There is now a public preview for Azure Functions and support of Python version 3.12. So yeah, just a new support update there for the later version of Python. There is now a public preview for Azure Confidential Ledger and defining and running user-defined functions within Azure Confidential Ledger. These functions can be custom business logic Custom business logic can be written in JavaScript or TypeScript, and can take increased protection of data. Can take advantage of increased protection of data in memory by running those scripts in a trusted execution environment. So you can compute data for, say, financial records transactions, such as credit card risk analysis, etc., inside of that trusted environment to ensure that business logic isn't tampered with. Very, very, very cool update to this. Private preview. I've got no idea who's going to be invited to that. I'm definitely not, but that is going to be really cool to see in action. There is now generally available on the theme of Azure Confidential Ledger, effective from the 1st of March 2025. You can now keep your records in Azure Confidential Ledger, at the reduced price of approximately $3 per day per instance. So that's still like $900 per month, but there is a reduced cost there. So it's worth calling that out. I don't know what the original cost was. I don't have that to hand, but there has been a cost reduction there. And that is the end of everything for me. Quite a few updates this month.
Yeah, there's definitely a few in there. I quite like the interesting of upgrading the Gen 1s to Gen 2 in effect via virtual machines. So you can use the trusted launch side of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and because there will be workloads that it's not just this simple case of, rebuilding them, right? They're just, yeah. So being able to at least layer on that security is a real plus for me in place.
Yeah, kind of feels like they're looking to, at some point, it's not going to be anytime soon, I don't think, but deprecate the Gen 1, aren't they? If they've given the ability to upgrade now as well.
Yeah, you can't create Gen 1, can you? But you can still create Gen 1, can you?
I can't remember.
Yeah.
But
I'm just going to double check that quickly.
Yeah, and the other one was the Defender of the Cloud and the new, or the increased list of regulatory compliances.
Yeah.
Because I think NIST, the EU's NIST 2 has now appeared in that list.
Yeah, I didn't call that out, actually. It's at the top of the list. Yeah, so NIST 2, big regulatory control that's come into, all across Europe. That is supported, and it's across all three clouds as well. So it'd be interesting to see what coverage there is of, because there's a lot of non-technical controls with NIS 2, but it would be good to actually see a list of the defined technical controls, in the context of Defender for Cloud.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so is there anything else?
No, the other thing I just wanted to call out was it is technically March, but did you see the email and the update for device code flow? Conditional access policy is going to be deployed to everybody.
I hadn't.
Yeah, I had it in I had about 6 emails on one day for different tenants, and that Microsoft were going to be pushing out a conditional access policy to block device code flow, but it's only going to be in report only mode to start off with. But a tenant that I have access to has already got that policy in place because I put it there. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what that does in that, if it's going to be smart enough to pick up that existing policy or not.
Yeah.
So, but I had quite a few emails about it, I believe, last week. But it shouldn't affect people because not unless they choose to enforce it, because it's going to be a report only from the email. I'll forward you the email, Alan, so you can see it.
Yeah, I expect I've got it somewhere. It's been a bit manic at work. But yeah, no, that's cool. Okay, what's the next episode then, Sam?
Yeah, so I'm going to continue on my Defender for Cloud theme, and I'm going to do attack path analysis, and also what's it called? My the cloud security graph. That's it, which underpins attack path analysis. We haven't. I think we've sort of gone over it in episodes, but I want to just do an end-to-end example of attack path analysis and what really valuable insights you can get from cloud security graph.
No, that's cool. That sounds like a good one. Yeah, we've touched on it, or we've said, we can get stuff from it, but not actually talked about it as a as a product, well, not product, but the functionality of it in its true form. So yeah, no, that'd be good. Cool. So did you enjoy this episode? If so, please do consider leaving us a review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. This really helps us reach out to more people like yourselves. If you have specific feedback or suggestions to our episodes, we have a link in our show notes to get in contact with us.
Yeah, and if you've made it this far, thank you ever so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks all.